As some of you may have seen in my previous videos, I've recently acquired this wonderful old school 590 Tikka with a sublime bit of wood on it that someone has very cleverly put a cheek razor in. And it is a beautiful rifle, so I got that, shot out, I rebarreled it in 204, or I had it rebarreled in 204 and blued, and what a beautiful thing it is. But I cannot get over the dozy 3-shot magazine that comes with them. I can't shoot my normal 4-shot groups at the range. I can't shoot a load of rabbits in a row. 3 shots is just a joke. So I immediately disliked that, and I disliked the tacky, round, small plastic bottom metal trigger guard, and just bugged me all the time. It bugged me every time I fired the rifle. The 5-shot mags are expensive and relatively hard to find, and I wasn't happy about having to buy an 80 pound magazine to get another couple of shots. So I determined to convert to a drop box mag. That would mean I could use the excellent AI 10-shot magazines, which are only 34 quid. I have a really nice tactical looking trigger guard in metal, proper mag release, 10 shots, what is not to like? But it looked like an expensive project. I looked into buying the appropriate bottom metal, and we were looking at normal prices for it, a couple of £100, and then perhaps £100 of fitting. It was certainly going to be a £300 job. I was prepared to spend that, I suppose, but then I found that no one was doing 590 bottom metal or 595 bottom metal for that instance. So I was starting to think, well, how is this going to work? Then a forum member kindly emailed me and said that there was a chap on eBay who was selling bottom metal for various rifles for the much more reasonable price of £100. I thought I would buy the bottom metal and see what needed done. I knew that even if I bought one for a 590 exactly, I was going to have to inlet my stock, I was going to have to widen this and widen that, and that by any standards there'd be a good bit of work required. So I thought, well, why not start with a cheaper bottom metal, and then I'm quids in. So I bought a T3 bottom metal Dropbox magazine bottom metal for £103 and a fiver for postage, something like that. I thought I'd go with the T3 because I know the bolt spacing's the same. I have since read that perhaps starting with a Remington 700 short action would have been slightly easier, but be that as it may, I started with the T3 from this chap on eBay. Beautiful quality. It's brushed metal, brushed alley, stainless, some sort of hardened steel mag release, so that it doesn't wear out. I could not have asked for anything more excellent for half the price of the competitors, so I was really pleased with that. He even provides a spare pivot pin there, a silver pin here that goes through the release, a spare steel mag release, and the spring. So you've got a spare. I mean, that's fantastic. Anyway, I then realised the magnitude of getting this to fit, as you'll see in some of the photos that I will show now that I took during the process. Essentially speaking, the whole of the bottom metal is much bigger and wider. So what you have to do is take out a significant amount of the wood to get the metal to fit in. And then when the metal fits in, you have to get the magazine to go up to exactly the right depth and angle underneath the action, up through the mag well. To get it to fit. And then holding that exactly in place, you then have to bed that at exactly the right angle. So I would say at this point, if you are a full-on engineer, then this is a no-brainer. Get it done. Shame on you if you can't do it. If you have a Dremel, all manner of different bits, and you're a keen hobbyist, you should be able to do this. If you have a vise and you know the tools, you're going to be able to do this. I think that what is a deal breaker is if you can't bed, if you haven't bedded a rifle before and you don't understand that process. I would suggest that you would get to know that process first, because this is not really doable without understanding how to bed. So if you have bedded rifles, wood is easier than the other types, so that helps. If you've bedded rifles, there's no reason you can't do this if you have various tools. So essentially, you have to cut the wood back to get the metal to fit. You then have to get the magazine roughly to the right place. And in this rifle, which is a very chunky action, I mean, it's like a big old bench rest action, really. There's only a tiny little sort of finger slot in the bottom where the magazine used to go. Whereas if you compare that to, say, a Remington 700, there is basically no bottom to the action, and you've got all the room in the world. This, you've got a very strong steel action, and you've got to get large feed lips on the magazine up into it, as you'll see with the photos. So bottom line, get the bottom metal fitting, then you click the mag into place and you feel your way up into the bottom of the action, and you mill that out. What I used was a Dremel with a one of those super click lock, super strong blades on, speed lock I think they're called, and I carved out the action equally on either side, as you'll see in the photos. And that then gradually enabled me to get the magazine to where I needed it to be. Then what I did was I made sure that the depths of the wood were how far that was, the angle. If you take off a little bit of wood at the front, then the bottom metal and the whole magazine will be higher at the front, i.e. further up and tilted up, and the back is down. If you want the back to be higher, for example, if the bolt is skipping over the bullet in the magazine and not feeding it, it's not catching the back, then you have to take a bit more wood off at the back of the trigger guard, and then the back sits up relative to the front. So by this constant realignment through the removal of wood front or back, and the change in sort of pitch of the approach of the magazine, you then get it, after many hours of fiddling, to feed. And that's a lovely moment, and you'll see my joyous video of that first moment now. Woohoo! So having done that, the key then was to get it to stay there absolutely exactly. And I determined through my experimentations with this that a millimetre front to back and it wouldn't feed, and a millimetre of up and down, angle, and it wouldn't feed. So the tolerances for getting it super perfect were quite fine. I found that I could get it to do that feeding that a lot of people have to put up with, where you shove it out of the mag, stop very briefly, and then shove it into the chamber, which, if you think about it, you have to do a lot on a lot of rifles. I could get it to do that easy enough. I wanted it to just hammer in to the chamber all in one smooth, fast motion, without any concern about whether to do it slow, fast, having to pause. Just boomf, I wanted it straight in. If I was going to put all the work in, I wanted it to be perfect. So I really spent the extra hours getting it absolutely spot on. And then what I did was I cut the wood deeper than I needed to allow some room for bedding. And I then, this was stressful, I then put the bedding in, and I did the back screw up, which fortunately needed to be quite tight and quite firm against the bottom of the bedding, and then crept the front screw in sort of a 1/16 of a turn at a time, and check the feeding. Always with dummy rounds, obviously. All the rounds shown in the video are dummy rounds. They're made up, but no primers, no powder. Just be clear on that. You don't want to start messing about feeding live rounds, and yet you need a head in them. You need a bullet head in them, or it's not accurate, and they need to be the right length as well. So you have to make up dummy rounds. Okay, anyway, so I played about with that while the bedding was setting. Fortunately, you mustn't panic when you're bedding. You've got plenty of time before that starts to harden. Hours, particularly with Acra gel, which is what I happen to be using in a cold room. You've probably got about 12 hours actually before it stops being compressible. Anyway, I got it feeding just absolutely perfectly, and then I left it. I didn't do the screw up fully, I just left it exactly where it needed to be. And then I left it by the heater, and then I discovered that it had hardened nicely. I cleaned it up a little bit, and it feeds absolutely gorgeous. So I have done this whole, and then of course I sold my bottom metal and my existing 3-shot magazine. So the whole thing has cost me, the mags are 33, I think the whole job has cost me about £80. Now that's cheap compared to paying a smith 350 quid. That's if they'll do it, because a lot of smiths won't do the job because you can't get the exactly contoured 590 bottom metal. You have to start with another one, and that means more inletting and more alignment. You have to fairly heavily take metal out of the bottom of the action. It is a nightmare job. It's one for a rainy day. To tell the truth, it's one for a rainy weekend. But you can do it for under 100 quid if you've got a Dremel and a bit of time and you know how to bed. And I recommend that you give it a go. If you mess it up, take it to the smith and have him fix it. You know, why not have a crack? I did, it works, I'm quids in. I also think it looks really good. Let me pop this mag in and you tell me what you think. I got a fair amount of stick about taking an elegant stalking type rifle. This isn't a stalking rifle, but you see what I mean. Wooden, blued, beautiful, and putting a tactical magazine on it. To those people I say, bollocks. I wanted 10 shots. I wanted 10 shots cheaply. I wanted a decent metal trigger guard, and I did it. I don't give a monkeys about the subtle lines of a flush fitting magazine, what you should or shouldn't do to a rifle. If you want to paint your rifle sky blue pink and put stripes on it, and that helps you do what you need to do, you knock yourself out. I think this Dropbox mag looks kind of cool. I think it looks kind of M1 Garand. Have a look at this when I put the magazine in. Dummy rounds. I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Because we're in front of it, it looks a bit bigger than it is, but it's just about level with the bottom of the trigger grip, the pistol grip. So it looks nice, and I much prefer the trigger guard. I'll show you around at various angles. I also rounded off the back of the mag there. It makes it a bit easier to get to feed. I didn't want to have to chew the hell out of the magazine to get it to fit or weaken it. I certainly didn't want to start messing with these feed lips here, because there's a lot of tension on when you put 10 rounds in this. In fact, I only put 9 in, because otherwise you can almost dent. You can almost dent that when you put the 10th in. There's a lot of pressure. And these lips hold it all in, and I did not want to start filing them till they were 1/2 mil. What I did do, they were kind of curved on the top, and I just skimmed them just to make it a bit flatter, because that reduced the amount I needed to mill out of the bottom of the action by a fairly significant amount, just taking that little top surface off, but it's not weakening it. It was just a little kiss. So I've basically just sort of skimmed the whole of the top of the magazine and taken perhaps a millimetre off the front here to get it to feed. You're talking, 3-4 minutes of work, just to help. Don't be alarmed that you have to do anything majorly structural to the magazines. It does help that they're plastic in 223. I mean, that does make it easier and better looking. I mean, you can barely tell I've touched it. But most of the work was done to the bottom of the action, which I'll show you now. Okay, so that's the rail along which the lug runs, and you can see underneath how far up into the action I've had to cut. We're just below the lug runway, and I'll show you how the magazine sits up in that. The magazine pops up just the right angle. You have to get the angle exactly right and the height exactly right. You can see how I've had to cut wood back there to get the mag up. I've had to cut metal to get the mag up. I've had to angle it just right so the tip of the bullet is just on the feed ramp there. You have to be very patient and work it up gradually. That's the trigger guard, which I think is just gorgeous. I'm delighted with it. The whole thing matches the action really, really nicely. I have no doubt that this looks better than it did before. I certainly will clean that bedding up, but you can see essentially what's happening. That is flush with the wood there, whereas at the bottom here you're 3 or 4 mil down. So it is a major job to get it to align. If you think that you can put your bottom metal in and your mag will feed, you're going to be about 1 centimetre out and about 10 degrees. So forget about it. But if you're prepared to play about and you know about bedding and you know about inletting and you have the appropriate tools, then you can probably do a better job than I did, a smarter job than I did. But from the outside, now that, it is very much doable. And this chap on eBay, if you search for Tikka T3 bottom metal, the quality of the bottom metal he provides, although as I say that really is only a quarter of the project, but the quality of the bottom metal he provides is I couldn't imagine it being any better really. What more, how hard can it be? And as I say, having a spare spring is great. Everything works lovely. So yeah, give it a go, why not?